Picture this. It's a warm Saturday afternoon in September 1957. A woman walks into her local grocery store in Peoria, Illinois. She's wearing her best day dress, her hair perfectly set from yesterday's salon visit. In her purse, she carries exactly $12.50 in cash, her weekly grocery budget. She doesn't know it yet, but the small piece of paper she's about to receive, the receipt that will be handed to her in about 30 minutes, will survive for nearly 70 years. It will outlive her. It will outlive the store. It will outlive the America she knows. And on that faded, yellowed piece of paper, there's a secret, something that doesn't make sense, something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the 1950s. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. Welcome to the Receipt Box. I'm your host, and today we're holding something extraordinary. It's just paper, 4 inches by 6 inches, printed with fading purple ink. The edges are brown with age. There's a coffee stain in the corner. Someone folded it, unfolded it, maybe carried it in their wallet for a while. But this isn't just any receipt. This receipt was found last month inside a cookbook at an estate sale in Peoria. The cookbook was Betty Crocker's picture cookbook, first edition, 1950. And tucked between pages 247 and 248, a recipe for company chicken casserole, was this receipt. The date stamp reads, September 14th, 1957, Saturday, 2:47 p.m. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When I first looked at this receipt, I noticed something strange. Most of the items make perfect sense for 1957. Ground beef, butter, eggs, bread, coffee, milk, the typical Saturday shopping list. But then there's one item, line 17, right between tomato soup Campbell's and lettuce iceberg. It's crossed out, heavily. Someone took a pen and scribbled over it so aggressively that you can barely read what's underneath. Why would someone do that? What was so important or so shameful that it needed to be hidden? We're going to spend the next 40 minutes solving that mystery. But more than that, we're going to step into this woman's shoes. We're going to walk through that store with her. We're going to understand what it meant to be a homemaker in 1957 America. We're going to smell the produce section, hear the conversations, feel the weight of expectations. Because this receipt, it's not just a list of groceries. It's a time machine. Let me read you what's on this receipt. And as I do, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine you're standing behind this woman in line. The store is busy. It's Saturday afternoon. After all, there are other women here, other families. You can hear children asking for candy. You can hear the cashier, a teenage boy in a white paper hat, calling out prices. The store is called Ed's Friendly Market. It's a local chain, just 3 locations in Peoria. It won't survive the 1960s. By 1969, it will be bought out by a bigger chain. But in 1957, Ed's is thriving. The receipt header says, Ed's Friendly Market, where your dollar goes further. Now the items, I'll read them exactly as they appear. Line 1, ground beef chuck, 2 pounds, 78 cents. Think about that for a moment. 2 pounds of ground beef for 78 cents. In today's money, adjusting for inflation, that's about $8.30. Not bad, right? But here's the thing. In 1957, that 78 cents represented nearly an hour work for the average American woman. If she was working outside the home, most weren't. The median household income in 1957 was about $5,000 a year. This woman's husband probably brings home about $95 a week before taxes. Line 2, butter, Land O'Lakes, 1 pound, 69 cents. Real butter, not margarine. That tells us something. Margarine was cheaper, about 40 cents a pound. But this family buys butter. That suggests middle-class stability. Not wealthy, but comfortable. Line 3, eggs, grade a large, 1 dozen, 53 cents. Line 4, bread, Wonder, 2 loaves, 38 cents. Wonder Bread had just started their famous Helps Build Strong Bodies 12 Ways campaign. Every kid in America knew that slogan. This woman's children probably begged for Wonder Bread specifically. Line 5, coffee Maxwell House, 1 pound, 89 cents. Good to the last drop. Maxwell House was premium coffee. There were cheaper brands. A&P had their own store brand for 60 cents. But she chooses Maxwell House. Again, that middle-class indicator. Line 6, milk Fresh Valley half gallon, 46 cents. Now, here's something fascinating. In 1957, about 30% of American households still got milk delivered to their door, but this woman buys it at the store. That tells us she's probably younger, more modern in her thinking. The older generation, her mother's generation, would have stuck with the milkman. Line 7, sugar, Domino, 5 pounds, 49 cents. 5 pounds of sugar. In 1957, the average American consumed about 100 pounds of sugar per year. This 5-pound bag will last this family about 2.5 weeks. Line 8, flour, gold medal, 5 pounds, 59 cents. She's baking from scratch. No Betty Crocker cake mixes in this cart. Or, wait, let me keep reading. Line 9, Crisco shortening, 3 pounds, 79 cents. Line 10, bacon, Oscar Mayer, 1 pound, 65 cents. Line 11, cheese, Kraft American, 8 ounces, 39 cents. Kraft singles, pre-sliced, individually wrapped. This was cutting-edge food technology in 1957. The cheese that slices itself. Line 12, Coca-Cola, 6 bottles, 29 cents plus 6 cents deposit. 6-ounce glass bottles. You brought them back to the store for your deposit. Kids would collect empty bottles from neighbors to make pocket money. Line 13, Kellogg's Corn Flakes, 23 cents. Line 14, Campbell's Tomato Soup, 3 cans, 33 cents. Good. 3 cans. She's probably making that casserole from the cookbook, where we found this receipt. Line 15, lettuce, iceberg, 1 head, 19 cents. Line 16, potatoes, Idaho, 10 pounds, 59 cents. Line 17, crossed out illegible. Line 18, carrots, 1 pound, 9 cents. Line 19, onions, yellow, 3 pounds, 25 cents. Line 20, apples, red, delicious, 5 pounds, 49 cents. Line 21, Jell-O strawberry, 2 boxes, 18 cents. Line 22, Cool Whip, 39 cents. Wait, stop. This is wrong. Cool Whip wasn't invented until 1966. Let me look again. Paper rustling sound. No, my mistake. It says Dream Whip, the whip topping mix. Cool Whip's predecessor. Easy mistake. Line 23. TV dinner. Swanson turkey. 2 dinners. 98 cents. So she's not making everything from scratch. Swanson had just introduced TV dinners in 1953. They were revolutionary. Aluminum tray, 3 compartments, entree, vegetable, dessert. You heated it in the oven for 25 minutes. By 1957, Americans were buying 25 million TV dinners a year. 2 TV dinners suggest something. Maybe she's planning a night off from cooking. Maybe Thursday night, when I Love Lucy is on. Or maybe these are for the kids while the adults have a dinner party. Line 24. Cigarettes. Lucky Strike, 2 packs, 50 cents. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. She smokes, or her husband does, or both. In 1957, about 45% of American adults smoked. It wasn't just accepted, it was glamorous. Doctors appeared in cigarette ads. More doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette. Line 25, Ladies' Home Journal, 25 cents. A magazine. She's treating herself. This month's issue has an article titled, How to Keep Your Husband Happy, and another one about modern kitchen miracles. Pause. Subtotal, $11.87. Tax, $0. Most states didn't have sales tax on groceries in 1957. Total, $11.87. She hands over $12. She gets 13 cents change. She'll put that in her coin purse. Maybe stop at the soda fountain on the way home and buy herself a Coke for a nickel. Now, let's talk about line 17, the crossed out item. I've been staring at this receipt for 3 weeks. I've used magnifying glasses. I've held it up to different lights. I've even contacted a document examiner, someone who works with police departments to reveal hidden text. And here's what we know. The item costs $1.25. That's expensive. That's more than the ground beef, more than the coffee. It's the single most expensive item on this receipt. Under ultraviolet light, we can make out 3 letters. INE, it ends in INE. Now, in 1957, in a grocery store, what item would cost $1.25 and end in INE? Medicine? Possible. But grocers didn't typically sell prescription medicine, and over-the-counter remedies were usually cheaper. Aspirin cost about 15 cents. Magazine? No, those ended in azine, and we already have one on the receipt. Gasoline? You couldn't buy gasoline in a grocery store in 1957. Wine? Now we're getting somewhere. Wine in 1957 cost about $1.25 a bottle for decent table wine. But here's the thing. Peoria, Illinois, in 1957 had very strict liquor laws. Wine could only be sold in special liquor stores, not grocery stores. Unless it was cooking wine. Cooking wine had salt added to it, making it undrinkable for pleasure, but perfectly legal to sell in grocery stores. And cooking wine cost exactly around $1.25. But why would she cross it out? Let me paint you a picture of 1957 America, particularly for women. The Second World War has been over for 12 years. The men came home. Women who had worked in factories, who had tasted independence, were pushed back into domestic roles. Your job now is to be a perfect wife and mother. There was enormous pressure. Magazine articles, television shows, church sermons, all delivering the same message. A good woman keeps a perfect home, raises perfect children, and always has dinner ready when her husband comes home. And drinking, for a woman, during the day, that was shameful. Betty Ford, who would later become First Lady and open the Betty Ford Center, was drinking secretly in the 1950s. So was countless other women. They called it Mother's Little Helper. The pills came later, in the 1960s, Valium, Librium, but in the 1950s, it was often alcohol. Now, I'm not saying this woman had a drinking problem. I have no evidence of that. Maybe she just bought the cooking wine for the casserole. Maybe she crossed it out because her husband questioned the expense. Maybe she was embarrassed that she was spending money on fancy ingredients. Or maybe she crossed it out because she didn't want anyone to know. Didn't want the neighbors who might find this receipt. Didn't want her husband asking questions. Didn't want to face the shame of being a woman who bought wine. In the 1950s, receipts weren't just receipts. They were evidence. Proof of how you spent your husband's money. Some women had to show their husbands every receipt. Some men checked the receipts against the items in the cabinets, making sure nothing was wasted, nothing was frivolous. Can you imagine? The anxiety, the fear, the constant monitoring. That crossed out line? That's not just ink. That's a woman's secret, a small rebellion. Hidden in plain sight. Let me take you into Ed's friendly market on that Saturday afternoon in September 1957. You walk in through glass doors. There's no automatic opener. You push them yourself. There's a bell that jingles when you enter. The first thing you notice is the smell. Fresh bread from the bakery counter. The metallic scent of the meat department. Floor wax. The checkerboard linoleum is polished every night. The ceiling is painted white with exposed pipes. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead. This is still relatively new technology for stores. Some older customers complain it's too bright, too harsh. They miss the old days of softer incandescent bulbs. The shopping carts are metal, smaller than today's carts. The wheels don't always turn smoothly. You might get one with a wobbly wheel that makes a clicking sound as you walk. There's music playing, not rock and roll. Ed doesn't allow that in his store. Too wild, too teenage. Instead, it's easy listening. Perry Como, Pat Boone, Love Letters in Sand, is probably playing. It's the #1 song in America right now. The produce section is near the entrance. Vegetables are displayed in wooden crates, tilted at an angle. Nothing is pre-packaged. You select your own potatoes, your own onions. A young employee with a spray bottle keeps everything misted with water to look fresh. The lettuce is all iceberg. That's it. Romaine hasn't become popular yet. Arugula doesn't exist in the American diet. Kale is what you feed to livestock. Our shopper, let's call her Helen. A popular name in 1957. Helen picks up a head of lettuce. She examines it carefully. She grew up during the Depression. She knows how to spot the freshest produce. She knows how to stretch a dollar. Her mother taught her. The meat counter is in the back. There's sawdust on the floor behind the counter. A butcher in a white apron and paper hat stands ready. His name is Frank. He's worked here for 15 years. He knows most of his customers by name. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Johnson," he says. I'm guessing her last name, but Johnson was the second most common surname in Illinois in 1957. "Hello, Frank. I need 2 pounds of ground chuck." Frank scoops ground beef onto white paper on a scale. The scale is mechanical, with a needle that swings to show the weight. He wraps in the paper, folds the ends, and writes the price on top with a greased pencil. 78 cents. There's no plastic wrap, no styrofoam trays, just paper. Helen moves to the dairy section. This is refrigerated, but just barely. The technology is improving, but these early refrigerated cases struggle to maintain consistent temperature. You can feel the cold air spilling out onto your legs. She picks up milk in glass bottles. The cream has risen to the top. There's a visible line of separation. That's how you know it's fresh. Homogenization is becoming more common, but many people still prefer the old-fashioned milk where you have to shake the bottle. The canned goods aisle is impressive. After World War II, canned food became a symbol of American prosperity. You could have vegetables year-round. You could store food for emergencies. Campbell's soup was king. Their red and white cans were as American as a flag. Helen picks up 3 cans of tomato soup. She's making that casserole. The recipe calls for 1 can cream of mushroom soup, 1 can tomato soup, 2 cups cooked chicken, 1 cup rice, 1 package frozen peas. But she's bought 3 cans of tomato soup. Maybe she's planning ahead, maybe making extra. Maybe she just likes tomato soup for lunch. The frozen food section is small. Frozen foods are still relatively new. Swanson invented the TV dinner only 4 years ago. Not everyone has a freezer. Many families just have a small ice box inside their refrigerator. But Helen has a freezer. She picks up 2 TV dinners. Turkey. The label shows a perfectly arranged meal. Sliced turkey, whipped potatoes, peas, and cranberry sauce. Just heat and serve, the packet promises. 25 minutes at 425 degrees. Her children, let's say she has 3, the average family size in 1957. Her children love TV dinners. They feel special, modern, futuristic. Each person gets their own aluminum tray. You eat in front of the television. On Thursday nights, I Love Lucy is on. The kids sit on the floor, TV dinners on their laps, laughing at Lucy's antics. The checkout area has 6 lanes. Only 3 are open on this Saturday afternoon. There are no conveyor belts. You unload your cart onto a flat counter. The cashier rings up each item on a mechanical cash register. It makes a satisfying cha-ching sound with each entry. The cashier is a teenage boy, probably 16 or 17. His name tag says Bobby. He's saving money for college. Or maybe for a car. A 57 Chevy, if he can afford it. He calls out each price. Ground beef, 78 cents. Butter, 69 cents. There's no scanner. No computer. He has to remember prices or look them up in a book. Experienced cashiers have hundreds of prices memorized. Helen watches carefully. She's keeping a running total in her head. She knows she has exactly $12.50. She can't go over. At the end, Bobby says, "That'll be $11.87, ma'am." She hands over $12. 13 cents is your change. "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Have a nice day." A bag boy, another teenager, this one named Jimmy, loads her groceries into brown paper bags. Heavy items on bottom, eggs on top. He carries them out to her car, a '54 Buick Special, pale blue. She tips him a nickel. The whole shopping trip took 45 minutes. What is Helen planning to cook with these groceries? Let's reconstruct her weekly menu based on this receipt and what we know about 1950s American food culture. Saturday night, the TV dinners. This is unusual for a Saturday. Saturday dinner was typically a bigger meal. But maybe Helen has plans. Maybe she and her husband are going out. There's a new movie at the cinema. The bridge on the River Kwai just opened. Or maybe they're going to a friend's house for cocktails. Cocktail parties were huge in the 1950s. Everyone dressed up. The men wore suits. The women wore dresses, heels, pearls, cigarettes and martinis. Conversation about Eisenhower, about Sputnik. The Soviets will launch it in 3 weeks. About whether to buy a second car. So the TV dinners are for the kids. The babysitter will heat them up. Sunday dinner. This is the big meal of the week. After church, the family gathered around the table. This is what the ground beef is for. Not hamburgers. That would be too casual for Sunday dinner. No, Helen will make a meatloaf. 1950s meatloaf was an art form. Every housewife had her own recipe, passed down from her mother. But the basics were ground beef breadcrumbs. That's what one loaf of Wonder Bread is for. Eggs, onions, and some kind of sauce. Ketchup, usually. Some women added oatmeal to stretch the meat further. Some added bell peppers. Helen's recipe probably includes onions. She bought 3 pounds. And maybe some of that tomato soup. She'll shape the meatloaf in a loaf pan. Bake it at 350 degrees for an hour. Near the end, she'll spread ketchup on top. It'll caramelize into a sweet, tangy glaze. Side dishes. Mashed potatoes. She bought 10 pounds of potatoes. That'll last most of the week. Green beans from a can. Corn. Maybe a Jell-O salad. Jell-O salads were huge in the 1950s. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. Every cookbook from this era has an entire section on Jell-O salads. Strawberry Jell-O with canned pears. Lime Jell-O with shredded carrots and pineapple. Sometimes with mayonnaise mixed in. Yes, really. Helen bought strawberry Jell-O and Dream Whip. She's probably making strawberry cloud salad. Jell-O with whipped topping and maybe some canned fruit cocktail. It'll be served in a glass bowl, perfectly molded, glistening on the table. For dessert, maybe an apple pie. She bought 5 pounds of red delicious apples. With the flour, sugar, and Crisco, she can make a perfect pie crust from scratch. Monday, leftovers. The rest of the meatloaf. Sliced cold for sandwiches. Her husband will take a meatloaf sandwich to work in his lunch pail. Wonder Bread, slice of meatloaf, mustard. Tuesday, chicken casserole. That's what the cookbook was for. That's what the 3 cans of Campbell soup are for. This is the meal that required the cooking wine. Or at least, that's what the recipe suggests. The recipe, company chicken casserole, calls for cooked chicken. She'll probably buy a whole chicken. Roast it, use the meat. Rice, cream of mushroom, soup, tomato soup, frozen, peas, dry, white wine. It's baked in a casserole dish at 350 degrees for 45 minutes. You serve it with side salad, that iceberg lettuce, shredded carrots, and more Wonder Bread with butter. Wednesday, breakfast for dinner. This was a common 1950s tradition. Bacon, eggs, toast. Quick, easy, affordable. Helen can cook it in 20 minutes. The kids love it. She bought bacon, eggs, and 2 loaves of Wonder Bread. 1 loaf for sandwiches and toast throughout the week. 1 loaf for the meatloaf. Thursday, the second TV dinner, might be for Thursday. Or maybe Helen makes hamburger stroganoff, another popular 1950s recipe. Ground beef, onions, cream of mushroom soup. She might buy another can. Served over egg noodles. Friday. In 1957, if you were Catholic, and about 25% of Americans were, you didn't eat meat on Friday. So Friday night might be fish sticks, if she buys them later in the week, or macaroni and cheese. Throughout the week, the family goes through gallons of milk, The kids drink it with every meal. Dozens of cups of coffee. Her husband drinks 3 cups of breakfast. She has 1 or 2 throughout the day. Coca-Cola, special treat, maybe with dinner. Countless slices of Wonder Bread. The potatoes get used multiple ways. Mashed on Sunday. Fried for breakfast. Maybe potato soup later in the week. The carrots and onions are bases for multiple dishes. They're cheap, they last, they add flavor. Who is Helen? Based on this receipt and what we know about American demographics in 1957, I can paint a pretty detailed picture. She's probably in her early 30s. Born around 1925. That means she was a teenager during World War II. She might have worked in a factory during the war, building planes or assembling radios. But when the war ended, she got married like most women her age. She married young, maybe 19 or 20. Her husband came back from the war. Let's say he was in the Navy, stationed in the Pacific, and they got married within a year. That was common. The average age of marriage for women in the 1950s was 20.3 years old. They have 3 children. The first was born in 1947 or 1948, the beginning of the baby boom. That child is now 9 or 10 years old. The second child came along in 1950, the third in 1954. So she has a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. They live in a suburban neighborhood, probably one of those new developments that sprang up after the war. Levittown-style houses, all looking similar. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small yard. They bought it with a VA loan, monthly mortgage payment, about $65. Her husband works downtown, maybe for Caterpillar. Peoria is Caterpillar's headquarters, or maybe for one of the distilleries. Peoria was a major producer of whiskey. He's middle management, not wealthy, but solidly middle class. He wears a suit to work. He carries a briefcase. He takes the bus downtown. They only have 1 car, and Helen needs it during the day for shopping and taking the kids places. Helen doesn't work outside the home. Only about 32% of married women worked in 1957, and most of those were older women whose children had grown up. It was expected that mothers stayed home. Her day starts early. She wakes at 6 a.m., makes coffee, Maxwell House, percolated on the stove. The smell fills the house. Her husband likes his coffee strong, black. She has hers with cream and sugar. She makes breakfast, bacon and eggs toast. Her husband reads a newspaper, the Peoria Journal-Star. The headlines today are about integration in Little Rock, Arkansas. Federal troops were sent in this week to escort the Little Rock Nine into Central High School. Her husband shakes his head. Things are changing, he says. Whether he thinks that's good or bad, Helen isn't sure. After breakfast, he kisses her on the cheek and leaves for work. She clears the table, washes the dishes by hand. She doesn't have a dishwasher. Most homes don't yet. The older kids are at school. She walks the 10-year-old and 7-year-old to the bus stop, then comes home with the 3-year-old. The house needs cleaning. Every day, something needs cleaning. She sweeps the floors, makes the beds, starts laundry in the wringer washer in the basement. Automatic washers exist, but they're expensive. She's on a waiting list, hoping to buy one next year. By mid-morning, she's exhausted. This is when she might have a moment to herself. She turns on the radio. Soap operas are on, guiding light as the world turns. She listens while she folds laundry. Around noon, she makes lunch for herself and the 3-year-old. Maybe a sandwich. Tomato soup. She sits at the kitchen table, smoking a Lucky Strike, staring out the window. Is she happy? She's supposed to be happy. Magazine articles tell her she has everything a woman could want. A husband, children, a house, modern conveniences. This is the American dream. But sometimes late at night, after the children are asleep, after her husband has dozed off in his chair in front of the television, she lies in bed and remembers the war years, remembers working at the factory, remembers having her own paycheck, remembers the camaraderie with the other women, the sense of purpose, the feeling of contributing to something important. Now her purpose is keeping the house clean and the children fed. It's not that she doesn't love her children. She does. Fiercely. But is this all there is? At 2:30 p.m., she walks to the bus stop to meet the older children. They come home with stories about school. The 10-year-old has a science project due. The 7-year-old got in trouble for talking in class. She gives them a snack. Apples and peanut butter. Or cookies if she's baked recently. Then it's time to start dinner. She plans her meals carefully. The budget is tight. $12 a week for groceries. She can't waste anything. Tonight, it's simple. Maybe fried chicken. She'll buy the chicken earlier in the week. Not on this Saturday trip. Mashed potatoes. Canned green beans. Wonder bread with butter. Her husband comes home at 5:30 p.m. He's tired. Work was stressful. His boss is demanding. There are rumors of layoffs. They eat dinner at 6 p.m. The whole family around the table. Her husband says grace. They eat in relative silence, except for the kids' chatter. After dinner, her husband goes to the living room, turns on the television. Gunsmoke is on. The kids sit on the floor, watching. Helen clears the table, washes the dishes, wipes down the counters, sweeps the floor. At 7:30, it's the children's bedtime. She oversees baths, reads bedtime stories to the youngest, tucks them all in. Finally, at 8 p.m., she can sit down. She joins her husband in the living room. They watch television together. I Love Lucy is on. She laughs at Lucy's schemes. For 30 minutes, she can forget about the dishes, the laundry, the endless cycle of domestic work. At 10 p.m., they go to bed. Her husband falls asleep quickly. Helen lies awake, thinking about tomorrow, about the laundry that needs folding, about the chicken she needs to cook, about whether she remembered to pay the electric bill, and maybe, just maybe, she thinks about that bottle of cooking wine, hidden in the back of the pantry, and how, tomorrow afternoon, when everyone is gone and the house is quiet, maybe she'll have just a small glass, just to take the edge off, just to get through another day of being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect woman of 1957. September 14th, 1957. While Helen is shopping at Ed's Friendly Market, what else is happening in America? 9 days ago, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. It's the first civil rights legislation since Reconstruction. It's not strong. Southern Democrats watered it down significantly, but it's a start. 3 days ago, federal troops arrived in Little Rock, Arkansas. The Little Rock Nine black students, are trying to integrate Central High School. The governor of Arkansas called in the National Guard to block them. President Eisenhower sent in the 101st Airborne to ensure they could attend. The country is divided. In the North, many white Americans support integration. In theory. In practice, when black families try to move into white neighborhoods, riots break out. In the South, massive resistance is the policy. Close the schools rather than integrate them. Helen probably has opinions about this, but they're private opinions. This isn't something you discuss at dinner parties. Too controversial. Too divisive. In 22 days, the Soviet Union will launch Sputnik. The space age will begin. America will be shocked, terrified even. The Soviets are ahead of us in technology? How is this possible? We're supposed to be superior. The space race will begin. Within a year, NASA will be founded. Schools will frankly revamp their science curricula. Math and science suddenly become national priorities. Helen's 10-year-old son will be part of the generation pushed toward engineering, toward beating the Soviets to the moon. The economy is good, mostly. Unemployment is low. The stock market is strong. But there are warning signs. The Federal Reserve is worried about inflation. There's talk of a possible recession next year. There will be one. 1958 will be tough economically. Television is transforming American culture. 78% of households now have a TV. That's up from 9% in 1950. In 7 years, television has gone from a luxury to a necessity. The shows people watch, I Love Lucy in its final season, Gunsmoke, The Ed Sullivan Show, Leave It to Beaver, just premiered this year. These shows present a very specific image of American life. White families, suburban homes, wise fathers, patient mothers, well-behaved children, problems that are solved in 30 minutes. It's an idealized version of reality, but it's powerful. This is what Americans think they're supposed to be. This is the model. And if your life doesn't match the TV shows, if you're unhappy in your marriage, if you're struggling financially, if you're drinking too much or taking pills to cope, well, that's your failure. You're not trying hard enough. Other families are happy. Why can't you be? The pressure is enormous, for women especially. Betty Friedan will publish The Feminine Mystique in 6 years. She'll name it The Problem That Has No Name. The quiet desperation of educated women trapped in domestic roles, told they should be fulfilled by housework and childcare, but feeling empty, frustrated, intellectually, starved. But in 1957, that book hasn't been written yet. The feminist movement is still years away. Women suffer alone, thinking they're the only ones who feel this way. Some turn alcohol, some to pills. By the 1960s, Valium will be everywhere. Mother's little helper, as the Rolling Stones will call it. Some have affairs. Some fall into depression. Some push through, finding meaning where they can. And some women like Helen just do their best. They shop carefully, budget meticulously, cook nutritious meals, keep clean homes, raise their children. They find small pleasures. A magazine, a Coke at the soda fountain, a moment of quiet with a cigarette and a cup of coffee. They endure. So, how did this receipt end up in that cookbook? Helen probably used it as a bookmark. She opened Betty Crocker's picture cookbook to page 247, company chicken casserole, and tucked the receipt between the pages. Maybe she meant to throw it away later. Maybe she forgot it was there. The cookbook stayed in her kitchen for years. Through the 1960s, through the 1970s, she cooked from it regularly. The pages are stained with grease, splattered with sauce. There are handwritten notes in the margins. Add more garlic. Cook 10 minutes longer. Kids don't like mushrooms. What happened to Helen? I don't know. I've tried to research, but Johnson is a common name, and I don't have a first name, just speculation. But I can imagine. Maybe she lived a long life. Maybe she saw her children grow up, go to college, have children of their own. Maybe she became a grandmother, making cookies for her grandchildren, teaching them her recipes. Maybe in the 1970s, when her youngest child left for college, she finally got a job outside the home. Maybe she worked as a secretary or a librarian, finally earning her own money again, finally having conversations that weren't about laundry and groceries. Maybe she and her husband retired to Florida in the 1980s. Maybe they had 20 good years together, walking on the beach, playing shuffleboard, watching their grandchildren grow. Maybe she passed away in the 1990s or early 2000s. An obituary in the Peoria Journal-Star. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She will be missed. And after she died, her children cleaned out the house. They divided up her belongings. Most things were donated or thrown away. But someone kept the cookbook. Maybe a daughter, maybe a granddaughter. And that cookbook sat on a shelf for another 20 years, until that daughter or granddaughter also passed away, and their estate was sold, and the cookbook ended up at an estate sale in Peoria. And I bought it for $3, and I found this receipt. And now, 70 years after Helen walked through Ed's friendly market, we're talking about her, thinking about her, honoring her life. That's the power of objects, of paper, of the mundane details that survive. This receipt isn't just paper. It's a life. It's a story. It's a window into a world that no longer exists. Ed's friendly market is gone. The building was torn down in 1982. There's a strip mall there now. Most of the brands on this receipt still exist. Maxwell House, Campbell's, Wonder Bread, but they're not the same. The recipes have changed. The packaging is different. And the prices? God, the prices. 78 cents for 2 pounds of ground beef. 29 cents for 6 Coca-Colas. In 2024, Helen's $11.87 grocery bill would cost about $130, adjusting for inflation. But in terms of purchasing power, in terms of what percentage of income it represents, the comparison is more complex. In 1957, food consumed about 20% of the average household budget. Today, it's about 10%. So in some ways, food is cheaper now. But in other ways, life was simpler. There were fewer choices. No organic options, no gluten-free sections, no international aisles. You bought what was available, and you made it work. Soft music fades in. So what about that crossed out line? That mystery item? I decided something. I'm not going to solve it definitively. I could probably get a forensic document expert to reveal exactly what it says. But I think the mystery is important, because that crossed out line represents all the secrets women like Helen carried, all the small rebellions, all the hidden truths. Maybe it was wine. Maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe it was something innocent that she crossed out for reasons we'll never understand. The point is this: every receipt, every scrap of paper, every mundane object contains stories, contains lives, contains secrets. We live in a digital age now. We don't keep receipts anymore. They're emailed to us, stored in the cloud, deleted after 90 days. We won't leave behind these paper trails for future generations to discover. What will they know about us? What will survive? Helen probably never imagined that 70 years later, someone would find her grocery receipt and spend weeks thinking about her life, imagining her days, honoring her existence. She was just shopping, just buying groceries, just trying to feed her family on $12.50 a week. But in doing so, she created a time capsule, a perfect snapshot of September 14th, 1957, a window into American life at a specific moment. And that's what the receipt box is all about. Finding these moments, these lives, these stories. Next week, we'll open another receipt, another life, another window into the past. Until then, I want to ask you something. Do you have an old receipt? A ticket stub? A piece of paper from your parents' or grandparents' lives? Look through the old books on your shelf. Check the attic. Go through that box of family papers. What stories are hiding in your own receipt box? If this journey through time resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because every week we're going to open another box, another receipt, another life. The past isn't gone. It's just waiting